What is up, duelists? Arson Crofts here back from a brief hiatus to continue to bring you your daily GOAT format content. Hope you guys all had an enjoyable Thanksgiving for those who celebrate. Today's feature match, we've got 2Pale versus Rubo LZ. As always, both players rated in the top 200 on the Duelingbook ladder at the time this match was played. So some high-rated action for you all today. Let's hop right into it. Looks like 2Pale is going to win the RPS. It's going to lead out with set a bunch pass, so a lot of stuff potentially here to deal with for Rubo. You got to be worried about a trap dust shoot here for sure. We're going to see one hit the board. Take a look at what both players are rocking with. So Rubo LZ looks like they are likely playing a warrior deck, usually the only strategy that main decks Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke, so that's kind of what you got to be prepared here for if you're 2Pale, and that's the only target for a dust shoot as well, so that'll be sent back. But the rest of their opponent's hand is pretty good. They have Duo, Graceful Charity, as well as Knock, and a couple other limited cards. So not too many threats unless they want to dig with the Graceful Charity, but some powerful cards to deal with no matter what. 2Pale here, their hand, they're rocking a Graceful Charity of their own, plus Tribe Infecting Virus, plus Exiled Force. These are all just kind of staples, so could obviously be a lot of different decks in the format here from 2Pale. Exiled Force probably signifies that it's not Chaos Turbo. It's generally not a card that Turbo plays, but could be some sort of control deck. Could be Warrior. We could be seeing a Warrior Mirror match. Could even be, yeah, I mean, probably one of those two is most likely, but could be a lot of stuff here. But we're just going to see that Grandmaster get spun back, and then Rubo has to make the choice of firing off that Graceful Charity with nothing really amazing to discard. But you're probably fine with that because Warrior generally isn't playing like Sinister Serpents or Night of Silence or things that you actively want to discard to Charity. So just using it to kind of mix up and get some unknown cards in your opponent's hand after they resolve a Dust Shoot, it's probably a pretty good play. Yeah, we'll see that Grandmaster spun back. If 2Pale has a second Dust Shoot here, no point in using it, of course, because there's no second monster to spin back. You could hold it for post Graceful Charity, though, which could be pretty nice. Rubo's going to fire off the Delinquent Duo first, though, which makes sense. Get some info about what your opponent is playing before you choose A, to use Graceful Charity, B, what to keep / not keep from it. So I like this sequencing here. They're going to hit that Tribe Infecting Virus, so not too much info gained from Rubo. They're going to discard Exiled Force as well. Both cards that are generally fine, assuming this is like a warrior deck. They often play Call of the Haunted, Premature Burial, so you're generally fine with your good one-offs hitting the grave because you can always revive them later. So common to discard monsters off of Duo in these decks that play the revival cards. MST here from Rubo as well, so I guess really... So one thing you have to think about, 2Pale here, they did think upon Duo usage, so potentially bluffing that you have a Solemn Judgment, which if you are Rubo, you really want this Graceful Charity to resolve most likely, so I don't hate the idea of just MSTing to pop a back row. Let's see if they get punished for it, though. It is a Solemn Judgment, okay. So, nice play there. Other back row could, of course, be another Solemn, but less likely now that you've seen one. But kind of winning that potential 50-50 there, hitting the Solemn, and now likely clearing the way for this Graceful Charity to resolve. We'll see it go through. See, they discard the known Knock, and looks like they drew a Dust Tornado off the top as well. We'll see if they found any monsters. Doesn't look like it. Oh, okay. Set 2 back row, found a Blade Knight. So it looks like 2 of the 3 cards they drew were Tornado plus Blade Knight. We know one of the sets has to be that Mirror Force, and then I guess the last card is probably an unknown here. But Blade Knight here, getting powered up fully. Only monster on the board, plus no cards in hand, making it a 2k beater that will negate flip monsters that it destroys. So really powerful card. Very much the build around card for warriors. So even though you got Dust Shooted, you were able to, resolve your Duo, really simplify the game state, right? Go for some 1-for-1 trades like MST on their back row. And you're honestly in a pretty solid spot here if you're Rubo. Torrential Tribute, though, is pretty strong here to deal with the Blade Knight, and Rubo is almost completely out of gas, depending on what their back row is. Just going to have to pass the turn, but 2Pale in a near top deck situation Not too much action going on. We know they've got Graceful Charity in hand, plus 1 unknown. They're going to fire off that Graceful, try and find some gas here. Discard a Donzalug and a Premature Burial. Okay, so looks like we might have a Warrior Mirror match here, which is pretty cool. Don't see that every day. Very popular deck in the format, of course, but not so popular that mirror matches are the most common thing you'll ever see. And looks like they kept a Reinforcement of the Army to grab a Blade Knight of their own. Good card in the matchup. Good card when both players are top decking. Just gets tons of value out of being in these super simplified game states like we just went over. So choosing that one, not too bad of an option. Donzalug, of course, not really doing anything when your opponent has no cards in hand, so I can understand not keeping that one. The only other card maybe you would think about grabbing here is perhaps like DD Warrior Lady if you're worried about some of the other stuff your opponent could snag. But Blade Knight, I think, is just generally the best card in the deck a lot of times, so totally fine. At least the best monster in the deck that isn't BLS, of course. But yeah, Blade Knight's going to get hit in for 2k, and this is now a 3-turn clock. Set a back row here for 2 Pale. Unknown, of course, to us. Unknown. Everything's unknown to Rubo. Rubo here. Let's see. They have a Jar Reed to dig a little bit further. Now, interesting that they chose not to Mirror Force this Blade Knight later. I guess, yeah, kind of interesting play. Holding onto it for a little bit more value, which is a little strange considering, like, there is, unless you're playing some weird stuff, like in a typical warrior deck, you don't have a lot of answers to an opponent's Blade Knight that you have access to right now. Like, you have, like, Exiled, you have DD Warrior Lady, but none of those are just, like, straight pluses, so it would feel like Mirror Forcing the Blade Knight is probably a strong move, but I guess maybe holding it onto it for some bigger tempo swings. You can always, it's fine to trade a little bit of your life points to maybe plus off of it later. Could be thinking around that sort of angle, but we'll see if that ends up being the right call, of course. Rubo looks like they dug themselves into a tribe infecting virus, which is one of the clean answers to Blade Knight, but choosing not to attack. We know they have both players know that the Mirror Force is back there. So 2 Polys knows that they don't have to attack into this if they don't want to. But it is obviously a pretty large deterrent. Rubo choosing to hold on to whatever card they have in hand there, not opting to use the tribe effect to kill the Blade Knight and then attack. So a little bit interesting, but maybe wanting to hold onto that card in hand for later. Could be like a BLS or something that you don't want to discard, so totally fair. If it's like a Dead Dust Shoot or something, you're going to discard that all day, but there are definitely cards in deck that you might want to keep in hand in this scenario. 2 Poly draws Breaker for turn, and now you get ultimate punished for not tribe affecting during your turn and not using Mirror Force last turn, because Breaker is just going to pop your Mirror Force. Blade Knight will kill the tribe. Breaker will get in for 16, and this is just a huge blowout in the favor of 2 Poly. Rubo playing a little bit too conservative here, and you can see even several turns later the value of Trap Dust Shoot coming out here, because 2 Poly just knows that it's Mirror Force. They know this Breaker is the right play, right? They know they don't have to play around Torrential or anything like that, and this is just a huge blowout. Pops that Mirror Force. Breaker kills Tribe, hits for 400, or Blade Knight kills Tribe, hits for 400, and Breaker can get in for 16, dropping Rubo all the way down to 3k, and they are now facing lethal on board. Rubo draws for turn, draws a Blade Knight of their own, which can wall things out. You can kill the opponent Breaker and then threaten the trade later. And that's going to go through. No Sakuretsu armor or anything out of here for 2 Pale. Going to take the first damage of the game. But any monster here is really solid of a draw for 2 Pale here. Let's see, thinking. Just going to go ahead and crash those Breakers. Oh, and then we've got Call of the Haunted to just... Ooh, so you have the choice here. Do you want to revive the Breaker? Do you want to revive the Donzalug? Both of them take you off of the Chaos. Blade Knight is a 2-turn clock, but Donzalug will discard whatever in their hand. Now, you got to remember, whatever is in hand is what they chose not to discard from Tribe. Unless it was the Blade Knight, but that seems unlikely, right? It could be a normal summonable monster. Definitely not out of question. but it could be a dead chaos, right? Because I feel like if all they had in hand was a normal summonable monster before, you probably just use the tribe effect to kill the Blade Knight and play it safe. So the read here from Tupali is probably BLS in hand, in which case you could put the 2-turn clock here on with Blade Knight. That doesn't seem like the worst play. Yeah, we're going to get the Blade Knight. Resurrection, hit for 2k, set a back row, pass with lethal on board, Rubo, potentially Dead Chaos in hand. Premature Burial is pretty insane, though. Once again, you have an interesting choice here, assuming it resolves, of your own Blade Knight to threaten the trade again, or Tribe Infecting Virus, discarding the likely Chaos in hand, but maybe not making the same mistake you did before. Well, I guess you would have to use it there. Dust Tornado is just going to be game anyway. Yeah. Not going to see what's in the hand, but I bet you it was BLS. That's pretty likely. But it ends up being kind of a moot point because the Dust Tornado is going to come out, pop that Premature Burial, prevent it from resolving, and then Tupale in this Warrior Mirror is going to go ahead and take game one, resolving the early Dust Shoot going first, and using it to full advantage, playing quite well, and just continuing to apply pressure that Rubo could never really recover from. Although Rubo, maybe I misspoke because they could have made some different plays. Honestly, it was the breaker play from Tupale that I think really put it out of Rubo's reach. And, you got to make the call sometimes. You got to play around breaker. Sometimes you don't. Rubo chose not to and ended up getting punished for it. And paid the ultimate price by losing the game. Game 2, though, Rubo will be able to go first here. We'll see if anyone has some spicy side deck tech. Opening Pot of Greed, not exactly a side deck card, but definitely something you're happy to see here in Game 2. We're going to go with a T-set pass. Warrior often plays flip monsters in the side, stuff like Magician of Faith, Gravekeeper Spine. Not sure if you always bring that in against Warrior, but it is an option available to you because you assume they're going to side out their Nobleman of Crossouts and stuff like that. So it could be kind of cute to side into Faith Game 2, and then you have Faith on pot already. Would be interesting to see. Or it could just be any Warrior monster that you just want to keep hidden. So we'll see soon, though. Tupale opens Trinity of their own here with Graceful Charity. Just going to fire that off. Discard a Torrential Tribute and a Dust Tornado. So Rubo, knowing they won't have to play around Tribute here, is kind of nice, but not always the best card when you're playing Warrior because generally you want to be the one summoning monsters. So kind of a situational card. Definitely understand discarding it, especially early on in the game when you might have a handful of monsters and not really see a window to ever use it. Makes total sense. And Dust Tornado is just kind of a fine card to discard. It's kind of like filler that enables the strategy of the deck in terms of just like one-for-oneing the opponent and simplifying the game state, but it's not a super duper high impact card, so discarding it makes sense as well. Soul Exchange is a pretty spicy card, so Warrior decks often play Monarchs and stuff. So we'll see the Soul Exchange come down. They tribute it was just a DD Warrior Lady from Rubo. More defense than offense, so it makes sense to set it turn 1, especially when it can't attack. And they're going to go ahead and summon Mobius the Frost Monarch, which is quite a good card against Warrior because they play so much back row. We'll see if Rubo set something chainable. No, they did not. They're just going to pop a Sakuretsu armor, and this is tons of value and tons of pressure right out of the gate here for Tupale. With this Mobius hitting the board and getting a free shot for 2,400 already. Well, actually, no, you can't attack the turn you use Soul Exchange. Sorry. But this is a pretty massive threat that Tupale is representing, and they just got a ton of advantage out of this. Really just the Pot of Greed that's keeping Rubo equal on card advantage, because Tupale did plus here. You had the Soul Exchange trade for the DD Warrior Lady, and then Mobius plussed by popping the Sakuretsu armor. So Pot of Greed is the equalizer at the moment. Rubo here, lucky to not have taken any damage that turn, but is staring down quite a large threat. We'll see how they respond. Just going to go set a monster, set a bunch of back row pass, 4 to be exact. So Tupale, you might be thinking, you might be wishing that you held on to this Mobius to get full value, right? Mobius able to pop up to 2 spell and traps, but using it just to get the +1, totally fine. Not always going to find yourself in situations where you can get maximum value off of Mobius. And, if you're only +1ing off of a play you make, you can't really complain most of the time. But Mobius will get to main phase 1. Potentially we'll be able to attack here. We're just going to send it right into that back row. Yeah, we've got Book of Moon here, though, which is quite strong against Monarchs. Kind of like Tsukuyomi, right? Most Monarchs have pretty low defense. So turning Mobius into defense position, especially after it attacked for the turn, so it can't flip back up in main phase 2 or anything, it's kind of a sitting duck against most of the monsters in the Warrior lineup. That's going to resolve. Two poly going to set a monster set, a couple back row of their own. If you have something to protect the Mobius with, though, that isn't just another Book of Moon, then this is just a +1 for you, right? Book of Moon, not dealing with the Mobius entirely on themselves, so it's a little bit of a risky card. You're basically investing the Book of Moon now and hoping you can beat over the Mobius on your next turn. Otherwise, you go minus, which is why Book isn't always the most amazing card because it doesn't plus or go even on its own. You kind of rely on additional cards to get value out of it, but it's not super unlikely that you're able to. Rubo, though, draws return. Normal summon Zambira, great card against Warrior, just bigger than pretty much everything that they normal summon in the matchup. Gonna go ahead and try and kill that Mobius, and that will get through, so Book of Moon successfully trading with the Mobius. Mobius, of course, getting the value by popping the Saku, so you're not too upset about that. If you're 2 Pale, and right now the only difference in card advantage between the 2 players is still that Pot of Greed. Pretty good card. Zambira, of course, will drop down to 1900, but still super relevant attack value against most of Warrior. The only things that really beat over it that are normal summonable are full powered up Blade Knights. 2 Pale, we're going to go ahead flip summon Magician of Faith. So I was talking about how Rubo could potentially have gone some spicy Magician of Faith route with this Pot of Greed. Looks like 2 Pale either kept it in or sided it in. And they're going to be able to recur either their Graceful Charity, which is the likely pick, or Soul Exchange, which could be quite good if you have another Monarch in hand. They choose to grab the Graceful, standard pick there, and they discard a Tribe Infecting Virus, which is kind of an interesting card in the mirror, right? Because you're both playing tribal decks. So if you call Warriors, likely you're going to have some Warriors to pop as well. So I can see discarding it there, although it is, in a vacuum, very good against Warriors, right? So you might be a little bit worried if you're Rubo here, if you see your opponent discard Tribe, because it is an out to your Zambira, at least. And they'll discard another Dust Tornado. Talked about already why that's totally fine discard here. Oh, we got Premature Burial. Do we revive the Tribe to use the effect, or do we revive the Mobius and try and just beat over the opponent? We're just going to go the super aggressive route. Grab this Mobius. Mobius will go and try to attack over Zambira, and that will connect. So Mobius this game getting tons of value so far, sticking around on the board thanks to this Premature Burial and continuing to apply pressure here. 2 Pale pretty happy that they were able to resolve a Faith to grab a second use of their Trinity piece. And things are looking pretty good, pretty back and forth game so far. 2 Pale is also going to set a monster and pass here. Rubo, we had set Reinforcement of the Army. So interesting, oftentimes you'll see Warriors set just like normal spells, non-chainable stuff, if they have a Solemn Judgment in hand, just to play around Duo, play around potential Dust Shoots, although that's not usually left in against Warrior, but generally just to play around Duo here, probably in this matchup. So if you're 2 Pale, you got to think your opponent's got a Solemn Judgment set, probably. Otherwise, they would just be playing right into Heavy Storm earlier when they set 4, and that's generally not an advisable play. So one of these last 2 cards is probably Solemn, is the guess there. Rhoda here is going to grab Exiled Force. Pretty nice way to deal with Mobius, for example. Had to make the choice between that and the set monster, but Mobius is the more obvious threat, so dealing with it there. We're going to get Flip Summon Blade Knight. That's pretty cute, setting it before. I guess protecting from potential Tribe Infecting Virus and things like that. Maybe trying to bait your opponent into attacking, although unlikely that they have Sakuretsu or anything. But Blade Knight now stands alone on Rubo's side of the board, so we'll be able to negate the effects of flip monsters that it destroys. So if 2 Pale played another Magician of Faith here, it is definitely in danger. It's just going to go ahead and attack the other Magician of Faith, though. Only at 1600 here. Ooh, we got Sakuretsu armor out of 2 Pale, though, to negate that attack. Ooh, but then we got main phase 2. Slam down BLS. That was, well, you already had the Light Engrave, so the Blade Knight Sakuretsu play. Not the tipping point there, but Rubo holding on to that here for main phase 2. Gonna slam it down and likely banish that set monster. And that kind of explains likely why Blade Knight, or why Rubo chose to attack the Faith with the Blade Knight, because they must have always been planning to BLS in main phase 2 to deal with the set monster, so no need to attack it with the Blade Knight. Risk running into a potential spy or a DD Warrior Lady or anything like that. And you know, Tupale discarded Torrential Tribute a while ago, so the double summon Blade Knight plus BLS play would have been relatively safe, which is why they felt secure going for this, most likely. And playing BLS when you have a Solemn to protect it, as well as we suspect Rubo does, is pretty strong. That's going to go ahead and banish that. And it was a spy, so really nice play here from Rubo, not crashing into the opponent's spy and allowing it to resolve, which is, as we know, very strong against Warrior generally. Yeah, just playing really well with the sequencing here. And now you've resolved the BLS, you likely have a Solemn to protect it, and it can just kind of take the game over from here. So, really interesting game so far. We'll see how Tupale can respond. Delinquent Duo set here, just to rip out the final card. So, Rubo making the smart play before setting forward to play around a potential duo, and it ends up paying off. Because Tupale is just going to get a straight 1-for-1 here, which is, of course, not anywhere close to maximum value for duo. It is going to hit a Blade Knight, which you're probably happy to rip out of your opponent's hand if you're Tupale. We're going to get Tribute Summon from Mobius, which can pop 2 separate back row. I would expect we see the Solemn out of Rubo here if they have it. Yeah, show me the Solemn. There it is, as expected. And now this last card could be a lot of things. Probably unlikely that it's a Sakuretsu armor or a Mirror Force, because we probably would have seen it on the Mobius earlier. Could be a Torrential, maybe. Although, kind of like, yeah. I guess it could be Torrential, depending on what we've seen. Could be Solemn number 2, also. So it could be a lot of stuff. Tupale's got Heavy Storm just to deal with it. Interesting that you didn't just go ahead and Heavy Storm. Well, I guess you wanted to get full value out of the Mobius. So the 2 back row wipers kind of conflicting here. But Tupale is going to be able to just completely clear out the back row here. Show me Snatch Steal. Are we just clearing out everything to go for Snatch? It hits a Premature Burial. Okay, so just kind of a bluff set there. Just playing around duo like we said before. Set everything along with Solemn to protect against potential Heavy Storm. Just to play around duo, maybe Dust Shoot. But Mobius plus Heavy Storm is enough to clear out the back row for Tupale and show me the Snatch Steal. No, we're just going to set a back row pass. Is it Mirror Force, maybe? Mirror Force would be pretty good. But BLS is going to be able to survive here. Set a back row, not choosing to attack, playing around potential Mirror Force, potential Sakuretsu armor. Playing a little bit conservatively here, which is kind of interesting. But we'll see if that ends up being the right call. One note, against Warrior, you pretty much always want to summon your Chaos monsters in attack position because they will play Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke. So if you want to be cute, summon your Chaos in defense. It could always just get popped by Ninja Grandmaster, which is why you see it summon in attack position here. Just draw, set a back row pass for Tupale, though. Rubo now saying, okay, you've added another back row. So now I'm going to attack when now it's more likely you have Mirror Force. Yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like when you have nothing, you kind of just need to attack with BLS, and if they have it, they have it. That's my thought. We'll see if it ends up working out, though. If the second card is a Sakuretsu, I'm going to laugh, though. No, okay, so it was just a Mirror Force the whole time, so... I mean, I guess it would have been nice to known that earlier, but maybe what Rubo drew this turn makes them more happy to have done it. Or they could have set Solemn Judgment, in which case they were waiting for the Solemn to be live before they attacked with the BLS, which could be interesting. Yeah, okay, so well played there. Take back everything I said. Waiting a turn so that you could use the Solemn to negate a potential Mirror Force makes total sense here. You do lose a lot of life. Oh, we do have Solemn on the second Solemn, though, which is a little bit unfortunate for Rubo, so waiting a turn didn't end up mattering too much. But I still like to play, right? You can't play around Mirror Force plus Solemn, right? That's just not worth it. And the board will be completely wiped here. Equal on cards, sort of equal on life, although top deck Blade Knight is lethal from 2 poly, so you got to be worried about that if you're Rubo. You do have a back row to potentially dissuade that, but 2 poly probably has to know that any back row here that Rubo's not going to immediately use is just going to be set as a bluff. Because you kind of need to if you're only on less than 1900 life points here in this matchup. 2 poly, just going to draw pass. Doesn't have Chaos Live, which is probably the only thing that doesn't hit the board there. Right? No darks anywhere to be found, with that spy getting banished a while ago by the BLS. So 2 poly potentially with a stuck Chaos in hand. Pretty good if you're Rubo. And we draw a Breaker the Magical Warrior, which is a pretty nice top deck. Plays around potential top deck Sakuretsu armors from 2 poly. And it's a 2-turn clock. So going to hit in here for 1900. Drop 2 poly down to 12, and you're happy to pass with lethal on board here. Ring is very much live for both players. Considering, well, I guess 2 poly, you're not going to ring the... You need to ring the breaker to go for the tie in, like, draw step. Because otherwise you get to main phase 1 and you can't chain. You would just lose to ring breaker, and Rubo has more than 1600, so it wouldn't kill them. But potential out for 2 poly if they draw it. They draw a Reinforcement of the Army, which can also find an out as well. They're going to grab a DD Warrior Lady, which can just kind of wall out the breaker. We're going to go set that DD Warrior Lady, set a back row pass. So setting a back row into breaker with a token on it is kind of an interesting potential mind game here. Maybe it is chainable. Maybe it's ring and you can draw the game. That could be cute. Oh, we got end phase Dust Tornado, though. Pop that set. It was just a bluff set soul exchange, so the breaker token lives on, but unless Rubo top decks something good, breaker's just going to have to run to the DD Warrior Lady, and both will get banished. Another monster pretty much wins the game, though, and yeah, Tribe Infecting Virus. There you go. Game 2 here for Rubo. Tribe for game. Pretty nice. It's kind of rude that Tribe, like, has a decently high attack value, right? Like, I feel like it would be super playable as a card if it had like 1000 attack, right? Because then it would have its effect. But it becomes so good because you can also just choose to use it as a 1600 vanilla to apply pressure, and that's like super. I mean, we see like Chaos Turbo decks tribute summoning for Thunder Dragon, which is literally just a level 5 vanilla 1600 attack, right? So interesting design choice from the Yu-Gi-Oh design team, 20 years ago or whatever, 25 years ago. Printing Tribe with a relevant attack value. But it's a cool card, so can't be too upset for sure. I digress, though. We're going to go ahead to game 3 here. In this Warrior Mirror match, 2 poly is going to start us off. And they're just going to start by setting a back row pass here in the rubber match. Not the most exciting start. Rubo LZ can take the tempo here if they want. Delinquent Duo is going to be the first card played, and that is going to resolve. Let's see what they rip out. They snag a Solemn Judgment, so nice you don't have to deal with that in the future, although not the best early game card, of course, so not the worst thing to hit, or to have hit if you're 2 poly. And they're going to discard just a Dust Tornado, as we talked about before. Blade Knight's going to hit the board here, just 1600 attacker here, going to get in, though. And Rubo LZ taking advantage of the slow start from 2 poly, resolving a duo to go up in card advantage, and going up board in tempo and life advantage here with this Blade Knight. So off to a nice start if you're Rubo. We're going to get end phase Dust Tornado from 2 poly, which is just going to pop a Sakuretsu armor. So clearing the board of back row to potentially deal with this Blade Knight. It is only a 1600 attack monster, so a little bit exposed here. Obviously planning for the Sakuretsu armor to be there to protect it, but that got popped by Dust Tornado. So 2 poly can have its way with the Blade Knight, have their way with the Blade Knight if they want. Looks like they're a little bit starved for monsters here, which you're not 100% certain about after turn 1, of course, because sometimes Warrior will just choose not to normal summon a monster turn 1 because you can't attack with it anyway, and you'd rather just get the value out of it. But not summoning a monster turn 2 pretty much means that they just drew dead here, which is pretty unfortunate in game 3, but such is life sometimes. And this Blade Knight will live to see another day. We're going to add a Breaker the Magical Warrior to the board as well, playing into potential Torrential Tribute, which we've seen so far. this game, or this match, I should say. Gonna go ahead and pop that set, though. It was just bluff set Heavy Storm, so 2 Poly just having absolutely no action here. I mean, we do know that they play sort of bricky stuff like Monarchs, like Soul Exchange, right? If you're not drawing both of them in tandem, you could just end up bricking. If you have no monsters, it could be Chaos in hand as well. So that is kind of the risk you play by playing those somewhat bricky hands, is you could just kind of lose yourself here. And Rubo is just applying maximum pressure here with the Blade Knight, with the Breaker. Gonna get in for 3,200 here this turn, and this is on pace to kill them next turn. They're already facing down lethal, and this was only turn 2. So 2 Pale, you gotta prove you actually drew some real cards this turn, but could just be GG. Okay, so we see Soul Exchange, so that was one of the cards rotting in hand. Decent chance that they just didn't have a Monarch to go with it, but looks like they found one. They're gonna go ahead and summon a Mobius here. Okay, so 2 Pale notably did not shuffle their hand this turn, so we know that Soul Exchange and Mobius were already in their turn last time. So getting kind of greedy here. Now, I understand the play a little bit. You see Mobius and Heavy Storm kind of like last game conflicting each other because it's tough to get value out of both of them in quick succession, right? Because it's unlikely your opponent's going to be setting a bunch of back row twice in a row to get blown up by Heavy and then also blown out by Mobius. But so 2 Pale, we can see, like I said, because they didn't shuffle their hand, looks like they were just waiting to get some value out of their Mobius because Rubo had not set any back row, or not any back row that got popped by the Dust Tornado. Ooh, and yeah, so you can see 2 Pale here, I guess, for 2 games in a row now, drawing into a little bit too much spell and trap removal and not enough monster interaction, for the most part. I mean, this will be good because they can tribute over the opponent's Blade Knight, and then Mobius is obviously bigger than Breaker, so they can threaten to attack over it if they're allowed to get to their turn with the Mobius still on board. But yeah, double Dust Tornado plus Mobius plus Heavy Storm. It's really tough to get max value out of all of those, right? And you kind of see this, kind of see them making these really awkward plays, right? They went for a bluff set Heavy to try and convince Rubo that it was okay to set multiple cards so they could get value out of their back row removal. But Rubo not falling for it, and they're just gonna have to go Mobius just to be able to play some cards and wall out this aggression, because otherwise you lose. So you can see one of the pitfalls of siding a little bit too heavy into spell and trap removal against Warrior, because it's just hard to utilize all of it sometimes, as we've seen so far this match. Set it back right here from 2 Pale. I think that was the card that they just drew this turn. Rubo is going to draw Exiled Force, though, which is a nice way to deal with the Mobius. That'll pop it. Breaker can get in for 16. Drop him down to lethal range. And was that Soul Exchange play too little too late? Were you a little bit too greedy, waiting for more value out of the Mobius activation? Kind of looking like it, but you're not out of it yet. Back again, up against the wall, but you're really only, I mean, you're only facing down a 1600 vanilla here in Breaker. It is lethal damage, but shouldn't be super hard to deal with as long as you have literally like anything, right? Tribe Effective Virus is literally something, and we're going to have that discard duo to pop the Breaker, and we're just going to get in for 16. So 2 Pale probably wishing that they got a little bit more value out of that duo again. Kind of a common theme here, unable to get value out of all of their cards because of just how their hand interacted with what Rubo has been playing. Rubo playing pretty well, not giving their opponent any opportunities to use these. And, you know, Duo's 1,000 life is sometimes a real downside, right? You don't want to use it when you're super low on life, or unfortunately in this scenario, you kind of need something to discard to Tribe. And so getting basically no value out of the duo besides just using it as any old card to discard to Breaker. And it's looking really good for Rubo here. Haven't completely sealed the deal yet, but you got to be really happy with how this game has played out so far. You do have this Tribe to deal with, though, but Kaiku is a way to beat over it. I'm going to normal summon it, attack into the Tribe. Mirror Force, though, is pretty huge out of 2 Pale just to kind of stymie that aggression there. So not down for the count just yet. Kaiku will hit the grave. And Rubo does have a back row here to keep things a little bit interesting, for a little bit longer at least. Putting at normal summon Ninja Grandmaster. So this is now a real clock out of 2 Pale. Did they have enough answers? Was Soul Exchange for Mobius plus Tribe Discard Duo plus Mirror Force enough to turn the tide? We shall see. Rubo, of course, still has tons of relevant cards in their deck to deal with this. We haven't seen Tarantula yet. We haven't seen Mirror Force yet. Tribe's going to attack here, and we're just going to see have the Tarantula come through right on cue. Blow up 2 Poly's board. Now they are down to absolutely 0 cards with only 1600 life, no back row or anything, and almost any monster in the deck from Rubo will just seal the game here. They have Chaos Live as well for BLS plays. And we just have Premature Burial for, pick your monster, right? And that will be game there. 2-1 in a pretty intricate Warrior Mirror. We saw some of the pitfalls of some of the certain side choices from 2 Pale. A lot of spell and trap removal kind of conflicting with itself. Soul Exchange plays kind of, it didn't really brick here in game 3. But they didn't really get maximum value out of it, right? And Rubo's deck just seemed a little bit more consistent, just had more threat density, it seems like, and was able to kind of get the reverse sweep here, going down early on, but winning the last 2 games. Pretty cool match. First time I think we've seen a Warrior Mirror on this channel, so cool to see a mirror match of one of the more popular decks in the format. Hope you all enjoyed it. Happy to be back after a brief hiatus, and I will see you all next time.